Hello everybody, this is Roy Bhandari with TalkCondo.com, and today we're here to talk about a very special project with Eric Kuzuian, the president of PSR Brokerage, and that project is The One, which is located at the southwest corner of Yonge and Bloor. So before we go on, first of all I want to say how honored I think myself and my brother are to be involved in this project. It's a very special project on so many levels. It's a once in a lifetime kind of project. So we're so excited to be involved in this. So we want to thank you for involving our team.
It's a pleasure to have you guys.
For sure. So, The One.
The One.
So, first of all, quick agenda. There's so much to talk about on this project. So we want to get to know you a little bit and your involvement in this site and how involved you are in this project. When you talk about this site, you have to talk about the location first. We have to talk about the developer, the architect, and then the project itself. Just there's so many facets of this, the one that make it special.
I'm happy to get through it all with you, Roy.
Oh, awesome. So let's go. So talk to us a little bit about yourself. And I know you've been involved in the one since the very beginning of this site. So talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, one of our top agents in the office, actually our partner in our DuPont location, was the one who. We knew everybody wanted this site. We knew that the Stollery site, which it was before it got demolished when it was purchased, everybody wanted it. And there seemed to be a number that nobody was willing to pay. And we were fortunate enough to put Mizrahi Developments in line with the owner at the time, and they struck a deal. So we were excited to know that the right developer got the site.
For sure. We heard an interesting stat the other day, and somebody told me that this is the first time in 114 years, I think it was 114 years, that this piece of land has traded hands. And again, it speaks to the quality of the site. And
yeah, correct. It was owned by the city, and then from the city it was handed down to the owners of the Stollery site, and then for 114 years they owned it, and now it's with Mizrahi Developments.
Excellent. So you was involved at the beginning.
Right.
Now you're involved in the marketing of the project. So again, what's your level of involvement with the One at this point?
We are doing the sales and marketing with the One sales team. That's basically what we're going to be doing, and we've been involved with the project. We've known the project for quite a while, and we were brought on recently, officially, to get it to market.
Awesome. So this is one of those sites in the city. It's such an important site in the city. When you talk about location, this is the center of Toronto.
Correct.
It's the most important intersection in Toronto. I'd argue in Canada.
Correct.
It's such an important piece of the puzzle because of the two subway lines. As soon as this site was purchased, it's been the most talked about project in Toronto.
Correct.
So I want to talk about the location.
Right.
You guys have obviously been involved, so I'd like to hear it from your side.
Yeah, I think you were pretty dead on. This is definitely considered the nexus in possibly the country in terms of the intersection of most importance. And you have 500,000 ridership that goes through that intersection per day.
And it's important to put context on that because people often think about Union Station as the hub, but you said 500,000 people go through.
Yeah, and Union Station's at like 180,000 a day. It's like more than doubled. It goes through Yonge and Bloor per day, and that's the importance of that intersection to the city. And when you have the most important intersection in the city, then of course the southwest corner usually becomes the most desired location. Sure. So when we say we're happy the right developer got it, it's because you want to make sure that, and Sam Mizrahi knew right from the beginning that when he purchased the site that it had to be something of future landmark and iconic.
Yeah, we had dinner with Sam a couple of nights ago,
right.
and I think the first thing that really struck me was he understood the importance of the site and it's almost the weight of the site, and he's delivered on almost every single aspect of the project, which we'll talk about. But
sure.
that really struck me a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, and in terms of location, we talked about the ridership at Yonge and Bloor, but the other important factors with Yonge and Bloor is its proximity to the highest end of retail on Bloor Street. Of course, a short walk to the #1 university in the country, which is the U of T Toronto campus. And like I said, this building offering direct subway access.
Yeah, I think when you talk about location, Yorkville there's a laundry list of things that you could pull off. The best restaurants, the best shopping.
Sure.
It's the street that people fly in from all over the world, and they have to go see Bloor Street. So there's so much that there's a reason Yorkville is Yorkville. So there's so much to talk about the neighborhood. But I do want to spend more time talking about the builder,
Sure.
architect, and building.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about Mizrahi.
Right.
And again, based on what everything I've seen, it's become this perfect marriage of what this location needed. Like I feel like it needed Mizrahi,
Right.
because of the attention to detail that it's gotten.
Correct.
We were lucky enough to go through a Mizrahi building on Devonport,
Sure.
and
What'd you think?
It was incredible, and and this code.
Right.
These guys don't build, they build 5, 6, 7 times what code requires. Like, they were showing me the parking structure, and
right.
and they were so proud of how far beyond code they did in the parking structure.
Correct.
And it's such an afterthought for virtually every other building. They do what they got to do and move on.
Well, about 25 years ago, Mizrahi started with high-end custom homes, and he's never changed his vision of delivering that type of quality, regardless of what he's developing. So it was very refreshing to see, and very important when he grabbed the bookends of Hazleton and Davenport, and you put out this really exquisite attention to detail, high-end product that was so well absorbed in the city, so needed in the city. And then once you actually walk through it, and us who've seen thousands and thousands of condos in our careers, to notice those small perfect details is what really stands out, and you really understand the difference of development.
And he's brought a lot of that to this project. This project is those projects at scale.
Correct. Exactly. He's taken what most people would do only on a boutique building, and he's found a way to scale it, throw in some amazing technology, and some understanding of how the building should live 6 years from now.
For sure.
And kind of come up with this amazing, call it potion, that delivers on all those aspects.
One of the big pieces of the puzzle for me here is Norman Foster.
Right.
Like I'm obviously,
Lord Norman Foster.
I'm obviously biased.
Right.
For me, being from England, to me, he's the number one architect on the planet.
Correct.
Like, we're not. Again, what they could have done, they could have gone to a local Canadian architect and put something up, but they didn't do that. They went out and they found the best architect in the world, to do this building. You look at his CV; it's every building that he's designed defines that city. You look at the Gherkin or the Pickle in London. You see that building, it's London.
Right.
Hearst Tower in New York. You see that building, it's New York. The Apple. They could have hired any architect on the planet to build their $5 billion headquarters in Cupertino, and who did they pick? They picked Norman Foster, and there's a reason for that. So for me, that's such an important part of this building.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the building. I mean, exactly like you said, Foster and Partners. They don't just call themselves an architectural firm. If they call themselves a think tank, and the reason they call themselves a think tank is because they literally think of every aspect of how that building is going to survive and pioneer a new movement and become a future landmark and define the city. And when you understand the importance of this corner, and when you have the vision and the concept to create an iconic legacy,
for sure,
you go out and you hire Foster and Partners. And it's exciting to know that their first residential building will be on this site.
The word iconic and this sort of stuff gets thrown around way too loosely in our market, I think. But I really think there's something special here. So one of the things I have to mention is that oftentimes, people think of size as iconic. Right. But you look at I look at the Pickle in England. It's not the biggest building.
No.
But it's the special one, and it is very special in London. And so it's more than that. But here you get to marry size.
Right.
And epicness and all the rest of it, and it comes together so well.
Yeah, and it's not just the size. You're right. It's the design of the building.
Yeah.
It's this hybrid exoskeleton design that Foster and Partners have pretty much perfected, which brings an amazing feature to the way the building is going to look, quite different than anything else in the city, and it also strengthens the building up to 6 times more stronger than a typical tower that is built in any other city. So, it's definitely not just size, and then
it's form and function, right?
Form and function, and it also the thought of how it's going to meet the street and how it's going to, dwell with the public spaces and how the people in that intersection are going to feel emotionally when they walk up to the building. That has all been thought of by Foster and Partners, and when you see the designs, which you have and your audience will see, is there's no exception.
Yeah, you talk about how the building meets the grade, and people live on the streets. So how a building meets the street is so important. And when we got a chance to sit down and chat with them, they were so proud of what they achieved at the ground level.
Right.
You've got this 35 foot opening where the sidewalks have been extended.
Correct. The building's been pulled back, which is really...
cost them money.
Correct, which is really rare that a developer would do, right? So again, just to make sure that corner promenade is 30 feet wide to mimic some of the best in Fifth Avenue and other international cities. When I'll never forget the story, Roy, when Sam told me he's thinking Foster and Partners, 2 days later, Jamie, myself, and Sam and Jordan went to New York to look at a Foster and Partners building, their first residential building that they did in New York, just so that we can, get an understanding of, is Toronto ready for this? And when we saw that, we said, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah. So going back to what you were saying, you have this amazing ground floor of 35-foot ceilings. It's just a curtain of glass, and this amazing exoskeleton structure of this, call it bronze metal finish that is something that the city's never seen before.
The way it hits the ground and it creates that opening for, I saw the rendering with the Christmas tree and creating this public space for...
it's taken all that into consideration so that it can become a destination, so that the building, can host exhibits or art exhibits, or like you said, Rockefeller Center, kind of mimicking what that's doing, and just creating a venue where people could enjoy, not technically having to live in the building, but actually realize that it's a landmark that they'd love to visit, whenever they had free time.
Well, one of the things we've noticed is that this is so much more than a condominium building. Correct. It's so much more. We talked about the public space at the grade. We know there's going to be extensive retail. We know there's going to be a number of floors dedicated to that. So is there anything you can talk about on that front?
Yeah, so when, the other feature or the benefits of, and the concept to kind of create this exoskeleton structure is because it allows for barrier-free retail podiums.
Right.
And when you have these open spaces, barrier-free space, you can attract some of the best global brands to kind of come and do their restaurants or their retail, and that's basically who's at the table now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's jump up 18 floors.
Yeah.
And talk about the residences.
Sure.
So, and again, I'll tell you what struck me immediately. When you look at other buildings of this size in terms of 75, 80, 85, 90-story buildings.
Right.
The first thing we expect is 1,000 units, 1,100 units, 1,200, whatever it is.
Right.
One of the small attention to details that Ms. Rahi obviously did was as a tribute to Toronto, it's 416 units,
Correct.
400 units. So, they could have easily tripled the unit count here.
Right.
But that was something that, again, immediately that I noticed, and just something I wanted you to...
Sure. I mean, you can't be a world-class building if you do what everybody else is doing.
For sure.
And if again, Ms. Rahi Developments want to make sure that this building is internationally known, that it, helps put Toronto on the map in terms of a new way of residential quality. So you look at all the great buildings and the most high-end buildings in all these amazing international cities, and you realize that they have to have $15, $17 million penthouses. They have to have $5 or $7 million, lower penthouse units, and you can't just be 1,000 small units, because then you're just really not paying a tribute to what this building's going to be. So there was a little thought there to make sure that the number is 416. We could have done 406 or 426, but we found a way to get it to the number again to pay a tribute to the city. And I
love that attention.
That's what makes it special. And you're right. So, and what's amazing is you have only 416 units, but you have 8 elevator bays.
Which is, again, for anybody not in the condominium world, that may not, quite resonate, but 8 elevators for 400 units is
unheard of.
Yeah, absolutely. If we get 4, typically it's 1 per 100 units, but 1 per 50 units is incredible. And from what I understand, even the elevators are going to be state of the art, fastest elevators in North America.
Correct.
Everything has been thought of. So.
Yeah, these elevators, they're actually currently in production because the technology is not 100% there yet, but they've been contracted, and these elevators are going to be smart elevators. And the way they're going to work is, and it's funny because when you have that many elevators, you don't even really need this type of service and technology that's going into it. But again, to make sure that there's no exception to the details, these elevators actually start floating in between the floors, so they don't all go down to the ground floor and you have to wait for them to come up, and they become smart elevators, and they start understanding at what times people are on what floors are mostly calling for these elevators. And the technology's there, and when the project's finished, the purchasers or the residents will be able to call the elevator and their 24-hour valet, which we can get into, right from their phone.
See, it's amazing. But, I've been in high rises with good elevators, and I've been in high rises with bad elevators.
Correct.
And just the mindset between the two is such a different world. And
that's right.
And it makes it's a small thing, but it's a big thing, right?
Yeah, it's the little details.
For sure. So let's talk about valet.
Sure.
Again, every single unit in this building, again, what they want to emphasize here is that service is important.
Yes.
And that runs through everything in this building.
You can't be the best building in the city if you're not looking at the best way to service the owners of the building.
For sure.
So all that has been thought of. And when I say all that's been thought of, every square inch of amenity space has been thought of to the level of what the service is going to be to the purchasers and the owners and the residents. So right from the type of newspapers that will be in the lobby that people can come down and read, to the branded umbrellas that will be available for the doorman to give you if it's raining outside, to the protein shakes and the type of water that is going to be in the state-of-the-art fitness studios or the spin studios, all has been thought of. So the way the building works in terms of service is pretty much not seen here in the city of Toronto. But if you do visit, Tokyo or Hong Kong or New York, and you visit some of their best serviced buildings, that's kind of what this building is going to represent. And so you basically pull in off the quiet street of Balmudo is the entrance of where the 24-hour valet is. You hand your keys to the valet and either mingle in the retail, go down to the subway if you need to get anywhere else, or you jump in the elevators and you go 110 feet up, and that's where your residential lobby is.
Wow.
Yeah. So the idea that the retail and where the city meets the building becomes this public space, you want to offer exclusivity and privacy to the residents. So the Sky Lobby, which we're calling it, is technically on the 6th floor, but it's 11 stories up. And that's because of the height of the first few floors of retail. So once you kind of get into your residential lobby, you have your 24-hour concierge, as we talked about, your 24-hour doorman, and you have everything you could ever think of, from an 8,200 square foot outdoor amenity terrace that has a 2,000 square foot infinity pool facing south that's heated all year round. That's right.
Very important.
Yeah. Heated all year round, and the terrace itself is heated all year round with the snow melt system. So
nice.
it's really cool to see those type of features. And then of course you have your urban sanctuary spa and the state-of-the-art fitness studio, and the list just keeps going on.
You never want to leave the building.
No, you don't want to leave the building. You don't want to leave the building. That's right.
So we're in the lobby.
Yeah.
Next up, the suite.
Right. So we go from so again, you jump into one of 8 elevator bays and you fly up to your suite. Suites, again, were very well thought of.
Yeah.
No studios in this building. So the smallest unit we have is 581 square feet, 1 bedroom. Mm-hmm. And they go to a 725 square foot 1+10 to an 1,100 square foot 2 bedroom, 2 bath. And then the 2 bedroom, 2 baths can go anywhere from 1,100 to 1,353. And then the 2+ dens and the 3 bedrooms start in the 1,495 range, and they can go up to a 5,700 square foot 3-story penthouse.
Which I think you're buying, right?
Yes. I be lucky enough, but I don't think I can pull that one off.
I want to talk about the suites because
sure.
I think there's some really amazing features within the suite that are unique to this building.
Correct.
We talked about the exoskeleton structure.
Right.
The suites where it imposes in, and it comes into the suite and it becomes a part of the jewelry, as Sam Mizrahi mentioned.
Right.
It becomes a jewelry of the building, and it comes through to the suite.
Yeah.
Which I think is an incredible feature.
It's and that's, I think, a tribute to kind of like a Foster's and Partners, who can take a structure that everybody's usually scared of to not having, near their unit, to make it actually a desired feature
For sure.
in their unit. And it is truly unique, and it is the exoskeleton on all the corner units will be coming in on both sides of the exposure. And they are finished in this bronze powder coated metal that has been sourced in London, England by Foster and Partners. And like you mentioned, it just becomes this really, really unique feature that you don't really see in Toronto.
The other thing I notice, and it's hard to miss, is these benches that sort of run around. And oftentimes, if you're not familiar with the condo layout, is that space is typically dead space at the foot of the window. But by building in these beautiful wooden benches, finished, to the T, to the nines. It kind of reorients how you think about the living space.
Right. So it's, again, having an opportunity to kind of, get yourself right up to that window and really understand, almost become part of the building. So these amazing corner units have this standard, bench detail that, again, has never been seen before. And it's exciting to know that this will be the first project to offer it. And it's also, gives people an understanding of a new way to start living, and a new way to start designing space. And that's, again, a tribute to hiring some great architectural companies.
For sure. Obviously the suites are going to be finished
Mizrahi fashion.
Yeah.
So it's basically, everything in terms of high end. I mean, I think our baseboards are standard 8 inches as a standard baseboard. And what is truly unique in this building, again, that you don't see, but again is reflective of Mizrahi's values, is even the 581 square foot 1 bedrooms are going to be finished as a standard gas cooktop.
Beautiful.
So gas is offered standard throughout the building, and everything is absolutely panel ready, Miele appliances, and all the ceilings are coffered as well.
Beautiful. I think it was actually you who said it, and it really stuck with me. If you go into one of their old buildings, it's marble on marble on marble.
That's right.
And millwork on millwork on millwork. Like it's a different level.
That's right. And I mean, as well as I do, Roy, that having a solid core door in a condo is huge, right? Yeah. And that's why, again, taking his concept and his position to deliver custom homes, but just at a different product, but not jeopardize what the actual offering is kind of why you're getting these really elegant and exquisite and timeless details and finishes.
How about the views? How are the views?
Well, the views, I mean, when you're that high, and it doesn't really matter which way you're looking. I mean, you're pretty much got views everywhere. And what's interesting about Yonge and Bloor is it's actually one of the higher points.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it slopes.
The
city slopes towards.
That's right. So when you're actually looking south, you're just actually even higher than you think you are, because the city slopes down to the lake. So the location is amazing in terms of view, and whether you're looking northwest or east or south, obviously, views are exquisite.
One of the things we didn't touch on was, and again, it's one of those small features that I think is going to have a big impact, is this lighting feature on the exterior of the building. They mentioned that the building can change color depending on what they're celebrating. So on Canada Day, it can be red and white, and on Independence Day for the States, it can be red, white, and blue. And again, it's one of those small details. But if you think about around the world, go out to Toronto world for a second, and you think about the kinds of buildings that sort of support this feature or celebrate this feature. Like you go to New York, it's the Empire State Building.
That's right.
Glows red, white, and blue on Independence Day, and pink on when they're celebrating breast cancer awareness. So if you think about these kinds of buildings, they are that building this is working towards that, where it wants to be the Empire State Building in terms of stature, in terms of importance.
Yeah, and we've used the word before, but that's exactly what a landmark does, right? It positions itself to be a visual for the rest of the city, and celebrate when it needs to celebrate, to show emotion when it needs to show emotion, and that was a very, very special detail that was thought of for the building. That's going to be amazing to see when it's lit up at night.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be great.
There's a lot of those features.
I'm sure that,
there's so many of these features,
we could
right?
talk about those features, and we'd be here for days.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
So is there anything I didn't talk about that you feel I should have talked about at the one? Was there anything I missed? Because I think we covered the location, we talked about Mizrahi, we talked about Norman Foster, we talked about some of the amazing features of the building itself. Is there anything you feel we missed?
Well, I mean, we could just, one of the unique features that we briefly touched upon, which you don't see in Toronto that this building's going to have, is these 3-story penthouses.
Yeah.
And these 3-story penthouses are basically, it's 85 stories is the building. So, you kind of get off the elevator on the 82nd story, which is the penthouse. And from there, you have these 3-story corner penthouses, one each corner, so 4 of them. And they're 5,700 square feet. They have these grand circular staircases. They're kind of like a home. And then, of course, on the 86th story, you kind of go outside to your outdoor kitchen, your private pool, and enclosed in 20 feet of glass to make sure nobody gets blown off the building. I'll never see it, Roy, because I'll never go that high. But I'm sure it's going to be spectacular once they're done. And again, you just don't see that. You see that in some of the best buildings in the world, but it hasn't been done here until now.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of times that if there is a rooftop amenity,
right,
they give it to as a space that they rent out. We see restaurants.
Correct.
Whereas this way, they're actually dedicating that rooftop of 1,000 feet in the air.
Correct.
To that buyer.
Correct.
Which is really, really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully one day whoever buys that will invite us to a party and we can actually see it. Again, I probably won't go on the roof, but love to see the finished product.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited about this project, and I think you are, and I think the city is. So this is a really special one. If clients are interested in buying, what does that look like?
So the event is coming up, the broker event, and of course, TalkCondo always on top of our list to make sure that they come to the event, and I think the best shot they're going to have at getting a unit. So we always look forward to working with you and your brother, and we'd be happy to have you there, and I'm sure we'll get some deals done.
We'll be happy to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Eric.
My pleasure, Roy.
Thank you very much.